Hello, everybody, and on behalf of the Australian Institute of Architects, I'd like to welcome you to this member lean-in today with Vectorworks. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all gathering today. For me, that's the Gundungurra and the Darug people, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm Jo Nevin. I'm the Head of Partnerships here at the Institute, and it is my great pleasure to be your host today. So the session we have today is a great one. It's proudly brought to you by Vectorworks. Vectorworks is an award-winning BIM and design software provider that's been supporting architects, landscape designers, and entertainment professionals since 1985. With more than 685,000 users across 85 countries, that's a lot, Vectorworks gives designers the freedom to follow their imagination on both Mac and Windows, which we're going to learn about today. They have offices all around the world, including here in Australia, and they're part of the Nemetschek Group. Now to our guest. Troy Diamond, RAIA, brings over 25 years of experience as a documentation specialist. Troy works across a huge range of building types from residential and commercial to retail and education. His passion for beautiful, innovative materials drives his commitment to precise documentation and seamless implementation. Troy's approach is all about workflow, blending digital and analog tools so designers can stay focused on the creative process. So today there'll be time for questions with Troy as things come up. We'll stop halfway through the session and then again at the end. So as questions might come to your mind today, please just drop them into the chat and I'll be monitoring those. And when we come to those kind of allotted breaks, I'll ask those to Troy on your behalf, and we'll also be doing some polls in there as well. So that's it from me. Troy, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'll hand over to you to kick off.
My pleasure. So let's start. I'll share my screen and let's go. Okay, so today's session is all about the productive data difference. And so then if you're talking about data, then typically, then we're going to talk about BIM, building information modeling, or some might call it building information management. Now, BIM can be a lot of things to different people, and each will focus on their particular side of the information part of any building. Now, obviously today we are focusing on as designers and architects, and therefore there's a few different approaches that typically architects will take, and the first of that is that of little BIM. Now, the little BIM, I'm trying to actually remember, I apologize to the author who coined the term little BIM and big BIM, but the little BIM process, or the little BIM describes the process of using your virtual building model to improve your intra-studio design processes. So I'm sure if you're using 3D at the moment, you might be using SketchUp, whatever type of program you're using. You might be using Rhino, Revit, whatever you're using. That 3D model has inherent benefits, and therefore there's value in using it. That said, you can get lost in the model sometimes, and it's not always as much of a benefit as it could be. That's when we get to big BIM. And if you're working on larger projects and infrastructure projects or multi-res or commercial, big BIM describes, and I'll just put that to one side, big BIM describes the process of each individual discipline contributing to a centralized, intelligent virtual building model that at commissioning is handed over to the building manager to assist with day-to-day operation of the physical building model. So this is where big BIM goes beyond just the design and construction phases. It actually goes into the commissioning and then the day-to-day running of a building as well. And then that leads into the polls. So before we get kind of into the weeds, we have a few poll questions for you. They're not quick trick questions. It's literally just put in what BIM or CAD software do you use at the moment? And please choose multiple, because some of you definitely will be using multiple. How much time do you spend in scheduling each week? That is for things like finishes schedules, door and window schedules, even specifications as well. And what software are you using to complete that scheduling? So, yep, so you've got a few different options there. Do you less than an hour, 1 to 4 hours, 4 to 12 hours, or greater than 12 hours? Some of you that are the, as we would call them, I hope affectionately, you would take it affectionately, some of the grey hairs, as we would call them, who used to look after the specifications in my previous life, they would often be the ones that were spend a lot of their time checking our schedules and making sure that all our specifications are up to scratch. And certainly a massive benefit if you happen to have them in your particular practice. So choose one of those, and then Joe, perhaps we can go on to question number 3. And yes, and what software are you using to complete these the scheduling? So are you just using spreadsheets and Word documents, word processing software, Google Docs, any of those type of things, Google Sheets? Are you using an online service? Are you using your CAD and BIM software, or are you using all of the above? So once you've entered that, we can go on to the next. So why is data important? Well, as I alluded to previously, data is the side of your documentation processes that gets rid of busy work. If you've just come from a CAD background, then often you are having to repeat a lot of processes time after time. And yes, some of those, if you're using, say, blocks and symbols, there's a little bit of where you're saving times through creating an object once and then using it repeatedly. But in that process, there's still a lot of busy work and basically just time that is spent repeating tasks. So data transforms your drawings and models from geometric representations into information-rich resources that empower efficient design, documentation, and collaboration. And using that data, you are able to get informed design decisions, automation and efficiency, enhanced visualization, customization and flexibility, collaboration and consistency, and efficient documentation. And we're going to touch on most of these today. So that also leads me to the question, can you have too much data? And the answer is yes. Don't just think that all data is useful. And if you're searching at clickbait or searching on Google and the amount of options that you get when you search for Google, then typically 1 or 2 might be helpful, and a lot of the others are just distractions. And so it's really helping when you're trying to you can't drink from the fire hose. You need to kind of focus in on a particular part of the data to actually make sure that it's useful. For instance, if any of you have been using 3D LiDAR scans, the Elvis resource, which provides LiDAR for much of Australia, if I zoom into this here, there's a lot of 3D points in here. This is just a 2D representation, hence why it's pixelated, but all those points in effect, and actually more, are 3D points in space. But all of that data, you need massive computers to be able to run all that data efficiently. So there's better ways to use that data. And the same actually when it comes to even objects within our CAD and BIM software. For instance, this is just a door object within Vectorworks. So you can see in here, there's a whole lot of different parameters. And actually, if I select this particular object in here, and you can actually see all of these parameters, they just go on and on and on, and it just gets overwhelming. But in Vectorworks, we actually have something that's called a style, and we can actually hide all the parameters. You can see the parameters that are grayed out, they've been defined by that style. The style is kind of similar to a Revit family, if you're familiar with Revit. So it's in effect a set of preset parameters that have been assigned to this particular plugin object, or a BIM object as we would call it. And so we can hide those style parameters, and then you can actually just focus on what is most important. So the width of the door, the top shape of the door, interior, what's its swing operation, what side is the hinge on, whether you want to include it on the schedule. So that enables you to very quickly go from like a never-ending list of parameters into something that's much more simplified, and thus enable you to focus on your design. And that leads me to record formats. So within your BIM software, CAD software, typically you'll have ways of using records, and records are just purely data that is associated with your objects or assigned to your objects. So we have data that's, say, embedded properties, plugin object parameters, record formats, and IFC property sets. So let's look at, before we jump in, let's just look at different Vectorworks object types, just so you can see how that data is actually being applied. And then we'll come back to these different plugin object parameters and records that are available within Vectorworks. So within Vectorworks, you may or may not realize Vectorworks is very powerful in 2D, and a lot of people in the industry actually that is often, unfortunately, how they only use it. And so here we have just basic line CAD type stuff. So Vectorworks, I like to say that the 2D of Vectorworks is like CAD meets Adobe Illustrator. In other words, you get all the beautiful gradients, you get all the colors, but it's just purely 2D geometry. Then we have our 3D geometry. So I like to say that Vectorworks its 3D modeling capabilities are like SketchUp meets Rhino. We have all of the NURBS modeling and all of the really complex modeling, but we also have the push-pull modeling as well. In this case here, this is just a 3D symbol, which a symbol in Vectorworks is like a block in AutoCAD. So it's a create once, insert multiple times. But you can see here how it's actually been shown as a 3D mesh. And actually there's a null chair as well. And you can see here as well how that geometry is showing. So if I jump into a 3D view, for instance, and just run into so you can actually start to see here, that's what it actually looks like in our kind of shaded render. This is our basic rendering. We have multiple rendering engines, but shaded is our basic rendering engine. And so you can see the chair and the alpha there, which anyone can admire an alpha, I think, just from its purely design beauty. And you can see there its representation in 3D. But the challenge that we have is actually then representing these objects in 2D as well, and to make sure that our general arrangement plans look great. So this is where we have our BIM objects, or our hybrid objects, I call them, or they're plug-in objects. So in this case, this is a wall object here, and we have a door that is inserted into that wall object. So if I just drag that door out, for instance, and then drag it back in, you can see there that the wall itself knows that this door can be inserted into it. And this wall here is also made up of multiple components. So you can see here, I've got a blockwork wall, insulation, internal lining, stud work. And so as well, this particular wall style, it looks a certain way in 3D. So we've got textures and 3D visualization capabilities there. We also have the same for this stair object here, and that stair can have different textures applied to it. Over here, we also have structural member objects, and yes, I know applying a brick in in such a fashion is no mean feat, and obviously there needs to be a lot of structural bracing and what have you inside that to make it work. But anyway, just something of a fascination of mine. But you can see here how they look in 2D, okay? And therefore they look great in 2D and in 3D. But then within, say, this wall style here, this particular wall style is using the parameters set by the CSR Redbook catalog. So not only do we have different components within this style, we've got textures, but we've also got data. So things like, say, fire rating. What is the system here? What is the build-up? What's the description? Is it load-bearing? all of this information in here can be used beyond just, say, push-pull extruding out your model. You can actually start to use this data in your schedules. Okay. And let's jump on to the next slide. So let's just jump back to the different types of records. So we have embedded properties. What does that mean? Well, each of these objects here, even though this line is just a line, but it actually has a length. Okay, so it's just got a dimension attached to it. If I change the length, it has a length, but it also has its insertion point, or its location within. You can see here we have an X and Y coordinates on the side of our screen. Well, this is the X and Y coordinates for this particular object relative to this particular point of the object. So on that left end there. So and then as well, the same for this particular polygon here. Whoops. If I just jump in here, I can extend this out, and then you can see there that my perimeter is expanding just by me extending that out. The same with my insertion point here. So this is that null chair that we were seeing before. Now it's actually, we do this symbol here is actually being shown as a hybrid symbol. In other words, it looks a certain way in 2D and it looks a certain way in 3D. So it still exists in 3D. But now it has a lovely, 2D representation. Just come back to that particular slide there. Cool. But if I move this about, then you can actually see there my X and Y coordinates change. And so all this is really saying is these are the inherent properties that are within every single object. The same as this particular rectangle here. If I move it out, then it's changing its area. And you can actually see its area in here, its perimeter, its ratio, and its insertion points in here. So, and beyond that as well, each of these objects also have things like their 2D attributes. In other words, their fill, their gradients. So you can see over in here in our attributes palette here. Same with this, we're applying a hatch there to that one. And the same here, we've got a line type for that particular one. So these are just the inherent properties to all objects. And all software typically manages it in different ways, although because Vectorworks has that 2D part of it, then this is where certainly from a visual point of view becomes very powerful to be able to apply. Then we have a plugin object parameters. So for instance, I was showing you some of the structural member objects before, but a structural member, which is quite a simplified plugin object that we have in our BIM tool set, it can have an ID number, for instance, or it can have a profile shape. So all of the hot rolled shapes, all of your U-beams, UCs, welded beams, all those standard profiles from One Steel, Blue Scope, they are built into Vectorworks, but that obviously has inherent capabilities, and also we can apply a material. And we're not going to really touch on materials too much today, but certainly things like embodied carbon, by using materials, you can actually investigate how much volume is being used by these objects. In other words, Vectorworks is not a surface modeling tool, it's a volumetric, or it's a solids modeling tool, which means it gives you volumes for any particular 3D geometry that you create. And by investigating that 3D volume, then we can actually start taking off quantity takeoffs and things like embodied carbon and those type of calculations. Then we go on to records. So a record here is purely, you can customize and create your own records. In effect, it's just a bit of data. You create a field name, and then you can apply that data to a particular object. So for instance, if I just come to my resource manager, window, palettes, resource manager, these are all the resources that are within this particular file. You can see here that this particular record has different fields, and then we can assign that record to an object. In this case, in the object info palette here in the data pane, for this screenshot here, I had a structural member selected. And then you can actually see all of the different material and the properties coming through there for a record. So you can create your own custom records and apply them to any particular objects, at least within Vectorworks. And speaking of records, and something that may interest some of you, especially if you're dealing with urban design workflows or site modeling, Vectorworks has a very comprehensive site modeling tool set. And if you're familiar with the e-planning portal or various Esri-based ArcGIS services around the country, a lot of the state governments now are going to an Esri-based service where you can download shape files and geometry from them, whether that's cadastral geometry, that is boundaries, or whether it is topographic geometry. Here's an example, and in fact, you might just want to take a screenshot. That we'll make these slides available for you after, so you will have this QR code, but we've done some extra training on how to use freely available and publicly available data to create your site modeling. Often you want to create a site model and understand the context, but before the surveyors already come on board. Typically it can take weeks, if not months, to for some surveyors, once you sign the contract with your client, to come on board and be engaged. And this really enables you to get up to scratch. But what I really want to hone in here is that all these shapefiles, and the great thing about the shapefile format is that typically that geometry, these are just 2D polygons, polylines, but they can actually have records attached to them. And then within Vectorworks, we can actually modify that geometry by record. In other words, they just come in on a plane, but then we can actually elevate based on they have an elevation record, and we can actually elevate those contours based upon a multiplier here, in this case meters. So we can then elevate them up and then very quickly convert that into a site model, which then we can start to play with and understand context. Now, previously I mentioned as well, I had a slide about the LiDAR, like can you have too much data? Whoops, I'll go to this slide here. Can you have too much data here? When you're doing for urban design studies, what LiDAR is really helpful for is for top of buildings. So it's really helpful to understand what the existing heights of buildings are, especially if you're doing an urban design studies or you're designing apartments and you want to understand the overshadowing of neighboring buildings. So this is where the LiDAR, unfortunately, will often pick up the tops of trees and those type of things. But when it picks up the tops of buildings, then it's giving you quite an accurate understanding of what those heights of the buildings. So this is where you can use a combination of the 2D geometry and then creating the topographic geometry there, creating a model from it, and then also establishing what the existing heights of buildings are with, say, the Elvis geometry. But you can go and find out more information on that here. I don't have time to go through it, unfortunately, today, but it's something that I absolutely love, given my background with working with urban designers. We also have IFC data. Now, IFC is the file format, which is the open BIM file format, which is run by the Building Smart International group. And in effect, all of these particular IFC, the reason why this IFC format is so important is because when you actually export out your document, and basically a lot of these items within Vectorworks, the BIM tool set, they are automatically assigned. They have a lot of this IFC data already built in. But actually, when you export it out to IFC, it actually means something. And that's why, so if you're doing energy analysis or all different types of consultants, their software will then be able to hook into these industry foundation classes, they're called, IFC, industry foundation classes. They'll hook into that and then treat them a certain way. Like a window is treated a certain way because it's a transparency, it has an opening, and therefore it's going to conduct heat a different way than, say, a wall would. And so therefore all of these particular objects are treated a certain way once they go to IFC. I'm not really going to go into IFC too much today, but I mean, Vectorworks is fully compliant with IFC 4x3 or 4.3, which is the latest standard. And also we're quite excited about the next standard as well, IFC 5, which is coming soon. But even older versions of IFC 2.3 Vectorworks is extremely capable with, so you don't really have to worry about that. And perhaps we can jump across to the question and answers, Joe, and see where, well, firstly, shall we start with how the polls went?
Yeah, we don't have any questions just yet. So just to be a bit of a quick call out to everybody, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat and I will read them out to Troy. And don't feel like you have to wait until a break to pop them in. We'll just bank them and then we'll be able to call them out. And yeah, so now's the time to do that. I can share the results of the poll as well. Would you like me to do that now,
Please.
Troy? Yep. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is the first results. Can you see that?
Yes. Okay, rightio. So, yep, ArchiCAD, AutoCAD, none from MicroStation, Revit, Rhino, nice, SketchUp, and Vectorworks. Oh, okay, we've got quite a turnout for our Vectorworks team today. Okay, cool.
Excellent. All right.
Cool. Okay, yeah, that gives me an understanding of who's here. So
Okay,
great.
go to the second one.
And okay, yes, but okay, some of you are doing quite a lot of scheduling. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Okay, that's a good understanding. So I mean, today is all for you guys that are doing a lot of scheduling, because trying to automate that is where the money is at, so to speak. Okay, yes, a lot of you are using spreadsheets, and yes, your BIM CAD software, or all of the above. Yeah, cool. Okay, great. Okay, well,
All
hopefully
right.
I'll give you something to think about. So as we progress on, let's yeah, let's jump back in. And
Jump back
obviously, if you
in.
have any questions, then please, as Joe said, answer away. And also, I apologize if you see me sipping. I'm sipping my lemon and honey and lemon because I've been a bit under the weather this week. So hopefully, my voice isn't too scratchy for you all. Another QR code in here to go into more detail here, but I just wanted to show you some of the getting away from kind of CAD workflows um, into more data-based workflows. So for instance, I'm just going to jump into this file here. In fact, this file has been included in update 6, and you can actually find it under building, and there's window. There's also one for doors as well. If you look under ANZ, anything that's spelt with an ANZ prefix, that's Australia and New Zealand. So that's our localized version there. So this particular file is the ANZ window styles file here. And there's also within that file, if you open it up, there's also the QR code there to take you to our Vectorworks University course that goes into more depth on how to use these styles. The thing that I just wanted to touch on now is why is using data important? So a good example here, we have all of these different window objects in here, different parameters that have been selected and different types of objects, and then they actually have what we call a data tag in here. Now, a data tag is kind of like a similar to a symbol or a block for those of you from AutoCAD. And in other words, it is create once and use multiple times. That's the focus of it. But how does that differ from a regular block? Well, I'm just going to copy this data tag over here. In fact, I'm not going to copy that one. I'm going to copy this one here. I'll copy this one. Cool. Okay. And you can see there, it's got a little warning signal because it's no longer linked to a particular object, and that's fine. I'm just going to ungroup that and convert it back into lines. So now we've just got a rectangle, a bit of text, and a line in here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a symbol and go to tools, modify, create symbol, and I'll just call this I can spell. Okay, and I'm just going to choose my insertion point. Just going to use the Z key to zoom in like so, and then go okay. Okay. So now I've got this particular symbol here. What does that mean? Well, okay, I'm glad that you asked. I'm just going to locate that symbol in the resource manager, and I can actually just double click on it and start to insert it around here. Obviously for a symbol, if I start to change this symbol, for instance, if I say change this to 10 and say I want to make it, say, if I'm doing apartments, say A101, for instance, as an apartment number, you can see there that already all of those individual symbols there, they have all been updated as well. So therefore, whilst if I have a repetitive object, that's helpful, but it's not really helping me with the data. Okay, so now let's just jump into, I'm going to come up into here. I can turn all my resources on for the moment if I want to. I'm just going to create a new resource and I'm going to create a record format. So I'll call this window number. And now I'm just going to create a couple of fields in here. Window number, and I'll just call it 01 is my default, and it's just a bit of text, but it can be a whole lot of different things in here, but just let's make it just plain text. And then let's create another one, and I'll say I'll call it, say, level/room number, like so. Whoops, I've put it in the wrong field. There we go. I want to put that in the title, room/level number. And then let's just call this, say, L0 for ground. Okay, and go OK, and go OK. So now I've got a record in here. Now what I can do with this particular symbol, if I come in and edit this symbol, I can actually come in here and I can go to Tools and I can go to Records and link text to record. And now you can see here, I can actually choose one of those fields within that particular record that I've just created. So this is the window number. I'm going to go OK. And you can see there that it's changed it to the default number, the 01. And if I come into here, I can go to, once again, or I can actually right click on that as well, and I'll go repeat link to text record. And now I'm going to say the room level number, okay, and go OK. So now it's assigned it back to there. Now where this becomes helpful is that if I want to change one of these, if I come over to my data pane in here and go to window number and say make that 10, you can see there now as well, if I want to select all of these, say L5, then I can actually change all of these and they don't have to have the same number. But the problem with this is these are really, besides me having to, I've got to still manually enter all of it. It's really just a little bit more intelligent than really just doing it manually. So this is where, for instance, with these particular objects in here, these data tags, if I select on this particular object here and I go to manage, I could actually, if I want to, renumber all of these. So I can actually say for this window number 1, which is the value, the stacking value here, if I want to drag that and say make it window number 8, I can actually make it so that it'll become number 8. I could also, within here as well, I can change the sequence settings. So I could renumber all of them, and I can say, let's just renumber them, say right to left. And I could renumber all of these windows and doors and do that. And I can go OK. And now you can actually see there that number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is actually reversed. And I go OK. And just let it have a little bit of a think. Oh, and go OK. And let it have a think. And there we go. So now they've actually been renumbered in the opposite direction. So this is where your auto numbering becomes extremely powerful. In fact, the other side of this as well is that, well, in fact, I'll come back to this. The other part of this as well here is that, yes, I've actually got a little bit of manual entry here where I can actually say, okay, L1, I could put in there, say L10, but the number here, the integer for the actual window number is actually being automated. So there's a little bit of manual entry there. But we also have some other data tags that are available where you can actually report on, if I actually just select these 2 data tags here, and I'm just going to change them out. And I'm going to replace these data tags with a different data tag. And instead of, I'm going to say, use the prefix layer. Okay. So you can actually see here, I've got an L0 dash. So you can actually see there now, it's changed that to L0. So if I wanted to, for instance, I could change all of these on this particular layer. I'm just going to change them, replace, and I'm going to use that layer prefix, the prefix layer version. And now give them a little bit of think time. And now they are all showing L0. That means now if I change this particular, say change it to L5, this prefix for my design layer. So let it have a think. And now it's going to update these objects here. There we go. Now they're all changed to L5. The other thing as well, within this file has actually already been set up. It actually has a story. So if you are using stories, we've got this prefix and suffix. If I say change the prefix and suffix, this is just the story name. So stories are a way of grouping a whole lot of different levels within a building. But if you're using stories as well, say I've changed that to say L7, say if this story was say level 7, it's using this particular prefix and suffix of the story name. And it's just going to have a little bit of a think there. Now I'll just come back here and grab these like so. And let's just swap this out and replace it in prefix story and go OK. And let it have a little think. And now you can see there that it's changed. Now, the other thing I didn't show you when you're using these data tags is that if I just delete this out for a second, I'll just come back to my annotation tool set over here. I'm going to select the data tag tool. I'm just going to select one of these data tags again and say I'll just use the prefix story again there. And what I can actually do, I can either do this and apply them one by one, or I can use them in the all eligible objects mode. And now I can just insert them and just let them have a think there. And now, boom, there you go. Now they've already been auto-numbered. Now some of those numbers, because of this tool, it's actually taking off from, I think, W10 in effect and taking off from there. But once again, if we want to, we can then come in, edit the tag data. We can manage all of that. And we can say, okay, these ones are missing here. So we can close those gaps in there. And we can then start to go okay and okay. And we can update that. And then these numbers are going to be automatically updated. The point is, it's a lot faster than just going through and doing it one by one and having to insert every single one of these little stories, symbols, and then going through and changing all the records for each individual object. They're all there, and you have full access to them. Okay, so that's a little bit on data tags and how to use the data. And this, what I didn't touch on as well, this data is actually coming from this object. So if I come into the this particular edit style in here, and it's showing as included on schedule, this ID tag, you can see here it's got an ID, it's got a prefix, and it's a number. And you can see there that's that prefix there. So that is the data is actually coming from the object itself. And we'll come back to this. Okay, let's get back on on task. So now, right, sorry. Okay, cool. Now I want to go on to graphic legends. So graphic legends are a fantastic way of merging different types of data in Vectorworks. So if you're familiar with what a viewport is, I mean, it's basically a viewport is very similar across all platforms, but a graphic legend is almost like a viewport meets a data tag meets a worksheet. We also have like a spreadsheet resource in Vectorworks available as well. So you can actually see in here, a graphic legend in here is neatly displaying wall types. I showed you a wall style before based on a CSR Redbook catalog. So you can express all of your different wall styles. We can also show different materials and areas of materials. Things like our cabinet work. We have our cabinet, our cabinet tool. We also have things like window and door scheduling. So let's jump into graphic legends once again, and let's just go back to our window style over here. So what you can see here is this particular graphic legend. This is actually just repeating all of this information here. So because I've renumbered all of these, you can actually see here that these haven't been renumbered. If I update that and recalculate it, and now you can see there all those numbers have been updated. So instead of having to draw these manually in 2D, just get rid of all of that. Let's do them using the graphic legend. So how is the graphic legend working? Well, if we look in and look at the style, so the graphic legend source is literally just looking for, is a particular windows, are these window objects on the schedule? And where that's coming from is literally when you select the object here, include on schedule. That's all it is. So because these particular openings here, these window openings, this is just an unframed opening or a framed opening here. These are not included on the schedule, therefore they're not showing up over here. Okay, so we can actually, in effect, if we wanted to, we can just get rid of these data tags like so. We can get rid of all of those because they're not going to show up on our window schedule. So our window schedule also enables us to be able to represent the window. So we've got this is our image, a defined legend image here. And so you can actually see here, we can choose what does it look like. This is a hidden line render, but we could have a rendered view if we wanted it as well. So under the general settings, we can see here our render view is hidden line, but we can use whatever. Vectorworks has 3 different rendering engines plus hidden line render, so you can choose whatever rendering engine you like to view it in. You can set a scale, you can set how it's aligned, and then you can also apply annotations to it. And then similar to these data tags in here, these particular fields, on the left here, we have just basically placeholder text just to show you what the fields actually represent. And then here we have different fields. So in this particular graphic legend, there's a whole lot of different parameters that you can insert. Now, I realize it's a little bit confusing initially, but we are looking to possibly do more training on this later in the year. And look, if you're interested in understanding more about data tags, then certainly you just need to understand that when you are applying these particular objects, like or these particular fields, they look a little bit confusing at first, but you get used to them. In other words, this is the actual object itself within these hashes, and then this is the ID prefix. But because we have so many different styles and libraries built into Vectorworks, you've always got a place to start, and then you can edit it and work back from there. So everyone, I mean, we're all on a journey with this, and it really just depends on, well, the way I work it is I take one of the examples from our libraries, and then I reverse engineer it from there. And obviously, if you need more assistance on that, we can obviously help with you with that as well. But in effect, all these particular pieces of text here, they're using a dynamic text in here. So this particular text goes beyond, whereas this particular text here is just regular text. This is dynamic text. In other words, it's receiving data from these particular objects in here. So that's a graphic legend. The great thing as well about graphic legends is they can be resized dynamically. Similar to a viewport as well, you can actually go into a graphic legend. You can edit the annotations of each individual cell. So you can see here, if I want to say, I want to edit cell number 3, then I can change to that cell there. I can annotate them just like what you could a regular viewport. And so this is where there are kind of an upgrade on worksheets. If I recalculate this worksheet, this is kind of what you get with a regular type of spreadsheet in Vectorworks. But this gives you a visual quality as well, and obviously your annotation. So, but let's get back to the main presentation. So that's graphic legends. And data validation. So once you have all of this information in your model, it can get a bit confusing to track where this information is coming from. So obviously you've got spreadsheets like what I just showed you there before, where you can look at all the fields of that come in just based on looking at a spreadsheet like this. You can also use your graphic legends to confirm as well. So if for whatever reason, if I've accidentally duplicated a particular window, like say W10, let's just go up to W10 up here, for instance. Yep, that one there. So say if I just copy that and paste it again, like so, and now if I just update that, now it's changed my quantity there to 3. instead of just one. So I could actually check and see, have I accidentally inserted multiple windows or doors into my drawing? So this is a way of validating your data as well. We have data visualization, and I'll come back to that. And then we also have the building smart information delivery specification. I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail today, but in effect, if you are dealing with projects that require an open BIM workflow, an IDS enables you to create a set of parameters that define all of the objects in your file, and therefore it will notify you in effect what doesn't comply with the end IFC specification that is required for your project. And this is where data visualization can come in as well. So let's just have a look at an example of data visualization. So a really common example for me that I would use this for is actually just checking the data within things like wall objects. So you might be using the CSR wall styles, for instance, and I want to check, have I got the right information in that particular wall style shown, so it's going to show up on my schedules correctly. So for instance, in here, this is a non-destructive editing. In other words, it's not changing any of the data or the model. It's just purely overlaying it with a particular visual look. So in here, these particular fire ratings have been colored a certain way. So now I can see the walls reflect, or a color reflect the fire rating for each wall. So in this particular file, I have an example here. And so this is just a very basic pavilion. Now, for a lot of, and so this is all structure basically. But when you actually receive often a structural member layout from a structural engineer, often it's just lines, and they're just colored lines basically. So I thought, oh, this is quite a cool way to be able to represent those lines and make sure that I've got the right structural. So each of these particular structural member objects here have an ID. And so based on the ID here, structural member ID, I'm just going to turn on this is called a data visualization. It's just a way of rendering this particular file. So now I'm changing that particular data, just like if it had a fire rating. In this case, it's just purely by the member numbers that would be typically issued from the structural engineer. And in fact, if I jump into a view here, you can actually see where this data visualization, when you create a viewport in a sheet layer, so like paper space, then you can actually it also gives you a little visual legend as well. So you can actually see in here, in annotations there, it gives you a number and a color for each and what those colors actually mean. So that's a way to confirm things like, yeah, whether it's any data that might be in your walls, whether it's things like fire ratings, whether it's finishes. You could even, okay, I've got a carpet finish here, I've got a timber finish here, so you could use it in your general arrangement plans. It doesn't just have to be in 3D, it's also in 2D. You can use it in multiple different ways to validate your data and make sure you're checking your data. And this leads me to probably something that I'm quite excited about. In fact, I'm going to undo that and let's come back to this one, and I will go there, switch back to that view. Okay. Democratization of data entry. Now, I know for those in practice, you have, and respectfully, for some of you that have the privilege of having mature members of your team in our my previous life, we would affectionately call them the grey hairs in the studio, who are often checking our schedules, and they live in scheduling, they live in specifications, they live in all of that space. And so therefore tools like Word and Excel, they're using them all day long, but they're not necessarily in the CAD tools. They're not in the BIM tools, okay? And one thing that Vectorworks can now do as of 2025 is reference Excel spreadsheets. So what I've got here is, this is my Excel spreadsheet. In fact, I think, do I have it here? Yes, this is my Excel spreadsheet here, which you're seeing a screenshot of here. But when it's referenced into Vectorworks, this is what it comes in like, okay? So this is a worksheet in Vectorworks. We call spreadsheets worksheets. And so this has all just been referenced in. But then how do I then apply this particular information to my model? Well, good question. Because then I could either keep this as kind of just as text, but this is where I could have someone working on a schedule like this, as well as someone else working inside the model and pushing that data into your objects within your model. So in this case here, that leads me on to the data manager. And this is a tool within Vectorworks that enables you to assign data and push data between different objects. So in effect here, like it could be a record, and we're actually enabled to create also data sheets. So you can actually manage different sets of data within your files, and it can get very complex if you want it to be, but it can also be quite simple. But my point is here, we can actually push different data around and once again, take away some of the, or a lot of the manual entry of data. Or alternatively, we can also use Excel spreadsheets from other team members that are more familiar with other software and bring that into Vectorworks as well. So how would that work? Okay, so within, if I come back to my pavilion view here, and if I select this, say this column here, and I come across to my data pane here, and we have some IFC data here, so you can see there that there's different IFC property sets, P sets they're called at IFC, but I'm not interested in that right at the moment. Here's my record format. This is my record, so I've got a record that is in my resources manager in here, and here I have a record, in fact, and what is it called? Pavilion materials. And if I just go to resources and records, so I just show just the records, and here we go, and there it is there. So if I just open that, or edit it, should I say, you can actually see there, these are all the fields in my record, and these are all the fields here. But what you're actually seeing here, where my default is just text, and I'm not actually, in this is actually defined by that particular spreadsheet. So I'm actually gone in, I've used the data manager in here, and I've selected a structural member. Let's just shut up all of the data in here. And I realize this is quite a little bit geeky, and it is on the geeky side, but if there's something, if you're trying to combine these different team members together, this is where some of these, automating some of these tasks can actually bring that collaboration as well as time efficiencies. Once you've got it set up, it's just kind of set and forget. And in this case, you can see here, this is picking up on the structural member ID. And if I come back to the spreadsheet here, it has an ID, which is those structural member IDs, which was reflected in the structural member as well. It's picking up on that code, and then it's actually pushing all of that data from the spreadsheet into the record. Anyway, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there. I just thought I'd touch on that because I just think trying to get the whole team involved in the process of validating data is so important. And I realize as well, we're coming up on finishing time. So anyway, it's just something I wanted to highlight there. Joe, I can see you've just jumped up. Was there a question?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. I thought if you're almost ready to jump into those, just let me know, because we've got, I think,
yes, why don't we jump into the questions, and then I've got one more example that I wanted to show, and if we get time for the example, we'll do that. If not, let's answer people's questions.
Okay, so the first one asks, can you show any AI in Vectorworks?
Okay, we have the AI visualizer. So in fact, I'm just going to search for this because I always forget where this particular tool is. There we go, AI visualizer. So the AI visualizer is based upon, it's purely a rendering tool. You can either use it in text only, or you can use it as based upon the image. So the composition in here, for instance, I can refresh the composition. And I hope I'm not going to mess with Zoom by doing this, but you can see there's my composition there. And I could say up in here, say watercolor, and say generate. And I can also use a version of creativity in there as well. Let's just see what it does. This is all done up in the cloud. It's not done locally, so therefore it's not going to tax your local machine. So you can see here it's starting to create a generation here. So this is more of a visualization tool. Within this as well, we also have in painting. There's a whole lot of different features in here. If you want more information on it, I can. That's one part of the visualization, AI. We're exploring different ways. But obviously we know that AI can be a little bit sketchy at times. The other thing as well is we have the AI assistant, and that's to enable you with help. And so therefore you can ask the AI assistant any help questions that you would like. And it's going to ask me to sign in at the moment, probably. But yes, please try the AI assistant as well. And that's effectively, how do I use a particular tool? Ask it a question, it'll come back to you with answers there. So yes.
Okay,
Next question.
brilliant. So next question is, there seems to be a predetermined idea by state government organisations and the larger architectural practices that BIM equals Revit. So how compatible or interchangeable is the files between Vectorworks and Revit?
Well, Vectorworks imports Revit and exports Revit. In fact, Vectorworks can even export multiple versions of Revit back, which not even Revit can do. If you're on the latest version of Revit, you can't go back. But if you're using IFC, OpenIFC, look, it really just comes back to understanding what is the end goal of your workflow and working it back from there. And unfortunately, I do see that, yeah, a little bit of the industry is held hostage by that. But it's not to say that Vectorworks isn't capable, because it absolutely is. And I mean, we were at the Building Smart Australasia conference, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and meeting with all the other vendors there. But look, it'd be, if you wanted to have a chat to us about your particular workflows, and then we could make a recommendation on that. Now, sometimes on a particular project, it does make sense to stay on a particular platform, but each tool has its pluses and minuses.
Okay. So next question, how did you set up the wall style to automate overhead cut as a dashed line in plan?
Overhead cut as a dash line in plan. The wall style, I think it was actually, was it the wall style or was it the framing member tool? Object types, if we just shut down the visualizer there. Was this what you're referring to, or is this the, so this stair here, this is purely just set within the graphic legend. Look, I could go into much more detail in here, but in effect, it's just assigned to the style, and it's using particular classes within Vectorworks. So design layers, classes. If you want to talk to us, if you have questions of that nature, I would say, and if you are sounds like you're a Vectorworks user already, then please contact me at support@vectorworks.net.au is probably the best way if you have these technical type questions, and I can come back to you on that and share with you how I created that. But certainly it's based upon the particular settings within each of these objects, and you've got different graphic attributes. You can go down the rabbit hole on all of this, so that's why I don't really want to bog us down right now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The next question is, I'm in WA and we have ArchiCAD in the office at the moment. Curious to know what tools and libraries come in the box with Vectorworks. Tired of getting tools and libraries from ArchiCAD that are either New Zealand or Eastern States applicable, but not for WA. So keen to know what kind of comes in the box with Vectorworks package.
Yes, well, probably we're looking at adding different libraries in all the time. The Stegbar libraries from your windows and doors. I mean, obviously your CSR, which is kind of like a national type standard. You've got all your different wall styles in there. Look, I'm originally from Western Australia, so I'm very sympathetic to the challenges that you deal with. That said, I was using Vectorworks back there, so I mean, I think one of the things that Vectorworks, at least in Australia and New Zealand, we pride ourselves on is that we provide a very, very good library of localized content, which will be equally applicable to Western Australia as Eastern States as well.
Great. We then just have a couple of the last two are more comments than questions, but they're both similar nature. So one says, sums it up is I just wanted to note that more training on graphic legends would be really appreciated. And the other one was also about how to get training. This person notes that they're trying to use graphic legends more and more, and understanding the field definitions and the layout constraints would be really, really helpful. So I'm not sure whether that's something we can do today, or if you could direct people to how, if they perhaps do have this product already, they can seek out more training in specific areas that they want to understand.
Yeah, look, let me just come back. Oh, yes. So within these windows and door styles, so great point. We've just added, as I said previously, we've just added these particular styles to update 6 of Vectorworks 2025 because I know that, yeah, you always need more. Um, but if you do need extra training, then myself and my colleagues do provide one-on-one training via Zoom. And in fact, I was just training a customer earlier this week on this exact topic on how to improve their scheduling. So we do provide one-on-one training. We can also even provide almost like BIM manager light type services as well, where we will actually even create some of these for you if you feel like it's just beyond you or you're just wasting too much time on it. But certainly have a look at this QR code in here. It will take you through some of these styles. This is a Vectorworks University course and a video that takes you through different chapters of using these new tools. See how far that gets you. You can also look at the coffee breaks. There's some great graphic legend coffee breaks on the university as well. But as I said, if you need more information, please reach out to me at support@vectorworks.net.au, and then we can get back to you, and just make sure it's the AU on the end, because otherwise you'll go to our US support team.
Beautiful. We will probably have to wrap up in the next few minutes, Troy. So is there any final
Yeah.
things you wanted to touch on?
Look, I was going to give a demonstration of publishing transmittals and drawings, but we won't have time to go through that because I know that just issuing documents like PDFs and DWGs and automating that process is something that a lot of people want more information on. But certainly, I think we're looking at, from us at Vectorworks, running more sessions based on data and how to create your own graphic legends and data tags and all of those type of styles for your objects, so you can start to extract more data out of it. So if that's something that you're interested in, please let us know, because it's certainly something that I'm keen to get some momentum behind for our local customers.
Brilliant.
And I guess the last thing as well, if you do want to, I mean, obviously, based on today, you can reach out to us at info@vectorworks.net.au. And if you do want to follow me on LinkedIn, I mean, I typically will only post Vectorworks related type stuff, so I try to make it useful and also, highlight projects that are using our products or projects that I like, basically. I try to keep it on target. I don't really use it as a chat hub or anything like that. I try to make it as useful as possible for our customers.
Brilliant. That's what we love. All right. Well, we are at time, but thank you so much, Troy and Vectorworks, for your time today. I know that I learnt a lot. It was really informative, and I'm sure that everybody on here got a lot out of that. And do make sure that you check out those QR codes. We'll also be able to distribute these slides to everybody who was in here today. And if you did jump on late, we will be putting this recording on our website and distributing that to you as well. So if you missed the beginning, don't worry. You'll be able to track down the full session in the next few weeks, and we'll make sure that that's shared with you all. So thanks again, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.